We are off a bit on our calendar, but just taking a look ahead, your next exam, exam number 2, will be on Wednesday, so a week from today. So we're basically a week behind, okay, on some of our things. We should be able to finish this chapter between today and Friday, and like before, I will provide you with a study guide, so we will do that review on Monday, okay? So yeah. All right. And so jumping back into the chapter, remember that this chapter deals with a period of time known as the Axial Age, okay, where we see, number one, the rise of new philosophies. It's that 1,000-year period from 1000 BCE to, 0. We see the rise of new philosophies. We see new inventions. We see the collapse of the old empires and the rise of new. And of course, with the empires that do survive, during this time, we will look at how they change, how they adapt, etc. And so, I promise we'll come back to this on Monday. The only one we actually talked about was China. So during this 1,000-year period, the Zhou dynasty ends. We see the collapse of the Zhou society, and we, after a 200-year period of civil war, we see the rise of the Qin and many of the things that make China, including the name, I know it's with a Q, but it's pronounced Qin, what makes China China. During this time, we see the rise of 3 philosophies. Number 1, Confucianism. Number 2, legalism. And number 3, Taoism. Okay? If you don't remember all of that, look at your notes or watch the video. And then, of course, some of the other contributions and advancements that come during this time. Number 1, in the military. Now, there was a whole bunch. I did have a huge list. But just FYI, these are the 2 most important ones, and these are the 2 that you should know for the test. Number 1, a military draft. Okay, people are drafted into the army. It's no longer just the warrior class. And number 2, the crossbow. Okay, pretty important military invention. All right. As far as agriculture goes, yes, I know I had, like the whole schematic and, more people, more food, and, all of that fun stuff. But the 2 agricultural contributions during this time, and once again, you should also know this for next week. Number 1, the idea of crop rotation. And so you should be able to just give me a very basic, number 1, they divide their fields up and they always leave one empty so that it would naturally replenish itself, and then they would just shift. And then, of course, also the idea that they would plant different things so that, they had a variety, okay? The other thing, and yes, the iron plow had been a thing for a while now, but they come up with the idea of tying it to the back of a really, really strong animal as opposed to just pushing it. So now the Chinese do it with an ox, but you can use pretty much any animal. So if you just say, the iron plow being pulled by an animal, like I'll give you credit, or like a farm animal or something like that. If you say ox, even better. Okay, but you can use a mule, a donkey, horse, stuff like that. All right, so today, let's bring this back. There we go. Today, we will look at India and some of the philosophies that arise and some of the ideas and changes that happen during this 1,000-year period, during the Axial Age. Okay, now, in the previous chapter, the previous chapter, if you recall, all right, the Aryans, that Central Asian tribe, invaded India and mixed with the locals. Most of those settled in the Indus River area, okay? Unlike many of the other Central Asian tribes, the Aryan people actually form different kingdoms, okay? And so you have, all kinds of separate kingdoms. It's not one giant, empire type. And the leaders are known as Rajas. They don't call them kings, they call them Rajas, all right? In the last chapter, we talked about how as these kingdoms begin to expand, because of population growth and stuff like that, they begin to move into the area of the Ganges River, which is in northern India. It runs along like the bottom of the Himalaya mountains. And then once that area fills up, they start to move farther and farther south into an area known as the Deccan Plateau or the Deccan Valley, okay? I promise I'll come back to this, but just to show you the map, once again, it's the same one from last time, okay? Original settlement, all right? And then, of course, over time, they start moving into the Ganges River area, and then from the Ganges, they begin to move south, okay? Now we're here, okay? One of the reasons why these different tribes, these different kingdoms, and the Vedic people are able to migrate into the south is because as you go farther and farther south in India, it's more of a humid, wet climate, and so the rain is becoming, is the principal source of water. So you no longer need to establish your society along the Indus or along the Ganges. You can do it, in other parts as long as there's suitable rain. And so over the hundreds of years, as these new kingdoms begin to set up, okay, yes, most of them follow, all right, the standard pattern of, you have a king, in this case you have a Raja, and they rule over their little kingdom, and when the Raja dies, then the oldest son becomes the new king, and then, that oldest son becomes the new king, and so on and so forth. But during the Axial Age, during this 1,000-year period, we begin to see some of these, and I guess that's why I start calling them states now. We see some of these states avoid the kingdom model, the monarchy, okay? We begin to see oligarchies, okay? What is an oligarchy? Yeah, know the definition. What is an oligarchy? An oligarchy is ruled by a small group, okay? Now, what you think of small, all right? It could be 2 people, could be 3 people, could be 10 people, could be 20 people, whatever. The point is, it's a small group. It's ruled by a small group. And in this case, because remember, all right, in the last chapter, we looked at the 4 varnas, the 4 social classes, okay? We've basically eliminated the king, and so it is a council of warriors, or a group of warriors, that run these states, okay? So maybe it's like, thank you ladies, the 4 strongest warriors, okay? They're the ones that run and decide all the stuff, okay? Or maybe it's a council of warriors, all right? So all of these people get together and decide, all right? But you end up with oligarchies, and it's kind of important because, we see this later with the ancient Greeks, but for the first time in history, we're starting to see people form a government that's not a kingdom. All right, that's not like, oh yeah, the gods chose, Emily here to be our king, and so yeah, we just follow that. Okay, now it's like, why do we have to listen to the king? If we have a council of warriors, they can decide. We get different perspectives, and of course we trust them because they're the warriors, number one. But also, if you recall, and this is a literal cut and paste. Once again, I've cut and pasted this thing. Oops, wrong way. No, maybe. the warriors are up there at the top, okay? So, you can't trust priests and you can't trust academics to lead us, but definitely the warriors, the ruling class, all right? Those are the important ones. And as I mentioned, okay, throughout all of this, okay, we're still keeping the 4 varnas, all right? We still have those 4 divisions amongst the people. What's the only way that you can move from one class to the next? Yes, okay. You die, all right, and the technical term is the transmigration of souls. But the easier term, reincarnation, all right? You reincarnate into the next class, okay? And that's literally the only way, all right? So, like I said, I've copied and pasted this like 5 different times already. All right, but yeah, okay, now, so we have different states forming. We have, let me go back to the map, we have different states forming. We have the people spreading throughout all of India, and some of these new states are no longer kingdoms, okay, but they are oligarchies, okay? Where the top warriors are the ones in charge of the state, okay? A couple other changes then begin to happen during this time, okay? Because, we don't want people to think that, yeah, I just got to do this and pretty soon I'm going to be in the upper class. Or, I die, I reincarnate, I die, I reincarnate, and now maybe I'll be the king, or people beginning to question certain things. And of course, you do get an increase in population. That's why we're spreading out throughout India. And so what begins to happen, okay, and once again, also important to know, okay, what begins to happen is that now within each caste, within each one of those 4 groups, we start adding sub-levels or subcastes, okay? And these are called jati, all right? Now, how are they organized? Because, and once again, promise I'll come back, okay? Because, here, you've got the Shudra, the manual labor, the Vaishyas, which are, the tradesmen, the farmers, the merchants, the Kshatriya, who are the rulers, the warriors, okay? And then, of course, at the very top, the priests. Most of these jati come into the lower 2, okay? And then, of course, some of them appear and whatnot, okay? And so what happens is that we begin to divide up people by their job, by whom they're related to, and of course we have, 2 different smiths here. Well, now we're going to divide them up by what they actually make, the type of metals they work with. And we know that gold is more, how do I say more better? Sorry, better, more precious than silver. So obviously a goldsmith is better than a silversmith. And so the goldsmith is going to be at a higher level, okay? And so when it came to those classes, someone who made money was considered more like, a trader, someone who bought and sold things, was considered more important and higher than someone who made things, who worked with their hands, okay? The example that I gave, if you were a smith, if you worked with a more precious metal, you were seen as being better, higher status than someone who worked with a more common metal, okay? If you were an artisan, if you made wagons, you were better than someone who made baskets. You were at a higher level, okay? And so now, when you die, you don't go from the Shudra to the Vaishya. oh, you dug ditches? Well, now you're going to move up to an animal herder. And now when you die, you're going to move up to a farmer. And now now you get to go to the next class. Okay? And yes, you start off as a coppersmith, and then an iron worker, and then a silversmith, and then finally a goldsmith, and now you can go to the next Varna. Okay? So that the journey from, there's my computer, sorry. The journey from here to here now takes much, much, much longer. At least 50 lifetimes, maybe 100 lifetimes. Because not only do you go through each of the 4 Varnas, but now you got to go through each of the Jati. All right? And remember, okay, we don't study it really, unfortunately. The concept is called Dharma, not karma, but Dharma, where you fulfill your duty to the best of your ability. That's what takes you up to the next level. But if you don't fulfill your Dharma, sorry, Emily, you might stay a ditch digger for like 3, 4, 5, 10 lifetimes. Okay? Or, you're not the best coppersmith alive, you can get thrown down back, a level, and then have to work your way back up. So, will you ever actually make it to the highest level?
No.
Probably not. Okay. And one of the things that I point out to students, there's a reason why it's a triangle. Okay? Because who actually gets to the very top? Very few. Yes, most of us are the ditch diggers at the bottom, are the Shudra. Okay? The feet of Purusha. Okay? Type of thing. All right? Some of the other things, and it becomes even more strict, because there was already the banning of marriage, bless you, between one Varna and another Varna. So unlike Cyrus the Great, you're not going to move up a social class by marrying someone in a higher social class. But now, you can't even intermarry within your own social class. All right? There is no mixing between the Jati. So, Emily's children can only marry the children of other manual laborers. Okay? Emma, as a farmer, her children can only marry the children of other farmers, and so on. Okay? So not even like, hey, Mom, I met this really cool farmer. Too bad. Okay, we're going to find you a good ditch digger to marry. Okay? Yeah, you're not going to marry a farmer. All right? Not in this house. All right? Type of thing. All right? Now. Okay? And so, once again, the old formula, okay? More food equals more people, and so the population increases and the population continues to migrate. And as they migrate into the Ganges valleys, we begin to see the rise of cities. All right, we hadn't really seen this too much before because most people lived out, wherever. And so little by little, with the advent of cities, you begin to get people, number one, who don't fit easily into one of these Varnas or into one of the Jati. For example, teachers and bankers, okay? Because the people who had money, who had physical wealth, they move into the city and they actually find an opportunity to lend money and make more money from people who need it, okay? Same thing, if you have a specialized skill, people are able to teach it to others so that they can improve their lives. But, okay, so you know how to do this, but you don't actually do it for a living. You just teach others how to do it, all right? So where do you fall there, okay? That becomes problem number one. We're getting to the different philosophies that emerge. So that's issue number one. we have these cities and we have people who don't fit nicely into the established varnas or into the established jati. Okay? Number two, and no offense, but humans are dirty. We really are. And wherever you see a congregation of people, you're going to see garbage. You're going to see waste. You're going to see, and with that, you get rats and other scavengers. And, you know, like, I'm sure if those two garbage cans weren't in there, or the recycle bin and the garbage, I'm sure, no offense, y'all would just leave shit on the floor, okay? Or at your desk, or whatever. That's just human nature, okay? And so, I guess if you live in the countryside, or, you know, your farm is like really far away from other people, you know, you have your ways of disposing of waste, or like, you know, whatever you do, maybe it doesn't affect other people. But when you're in a city and when you're like side to side with people, and remember, we're seeing, you know, quite a bit of population increase, then yeah, you know, other people are now affected by your garbage and your waste and all of this other stuff. And so, okay, who's going to clean this up? All right? Instead of making this a part of the culture or society or like a personal responsibility, during the Axial Age, Indian culture makes up a whole new varna, a whole new social class. But of course, we're going to stick them at the very bottom because it deals with garbage, okay? And so, don't worry, Emily, you are no longer at the bottom as an unskilled worker. Now there's an even lower social class, and those are the untouchables, okay? And so some of you, once again, I'll be back, may have been wondering, but Santos, there's 5 there. You keep saying 4, and you don't mention, you know, the shoe dry, you know. At the very bottom, you have the street cleaners. This image that I copied uses the term Dalits. I learned pariah. Once again, the word that you use depends on the translation and when you were taught and which translation your teacher used, whatever. But yeah, I learned it as the pariahs. The Dalits, if you want to just call them the untouchables, because that's like the most common term. Basically, these are the lowest of the low in I want to say modern-ish literature. They're referred to as the children of God because only the gods would ever like be around them. Like for the rest of society, it's a no-no. You can step on them, you can hurt them, you can do whatever, abuse them because they're the lowest of the low. When you hear stories of Mother Teresa, those are the people that she worked with the untouchables, the people that nobody else would go nearby, okay? So, instead of saying, hey guys, how about if we all just pick up after ourselves? Hey, here's a garbage can. During the Axial Age, we get the birth of a new social class at the very bottom, okay? Now, so, in the cities, you see the mixing of all the classes. You see people who don't fit nicely into one of the established classes. And of course, now you have a new class at the very bottom that is completely responsible for maintaining cleanliness, you know, the garbage and the dirt and all of that. Okay? Now, at the very top are the priests. And obviously, part of the system is that you do not mix. Not only with people of other classes, but as we have seen, people from other subclasses, people from other jati, okay? And so, when the people at the bottom begin to see the people at the top and their privilege, yeah, you begin to question, because it's like, wait, who does this really serve? Me being the best ditch digger in all of India, meanwhile, you're a priest and you get to sit in luxury. That just doesn't quite seem fair because I do more actual physical work than you. But you, oh, no, but that's how the gods want it. It's like, well, then why don't the gods come down and tell us and like literally be like, okay, Santos, this is what I want. Okay? Now, in the states where there is a king, the priests obviously are going to the kings saying, hey, we have a little bit of rebellion starting to form out there. So we need you, tell you what, we will convince the people that you are chosen by the gods, but you need to tell the people that, we're the spokespeople of the gods, and so together we can maintain each of us in power, because, come on, you're up here, we're like that one step below you. As long as us at the top, and I suppose if you want to apply it to even modern times, as long as those of us at the top can maintain hold on the power, everybody at the bottom, keep them in their place. Or if you ever watch the movie A Bug's Life, we don't want them figuring out that there's more of them than there is of us, and if they all got together, they could totally overthrow us. All right. So, okay. The king says, you have a point. And so, once again, in those kingdoms that have a Raja, not in the, it doesn't quite work in the oligarchies, but in the kingdoms where the Raja is in power, the king is like, hey, listen to the priests, they're the spokespeople of the gods. And of course, the priests are like, hey, listen to the king because the gods have chosen the king. Oh, and by the way, here's a story for you, okay? It is during this time, once again, that we get the whole, sacrifice of Purusha. All right, so you need to keep your place because I'm sorry, Veronica, you come from the feet, but we come from the God's mouth. So mouths are better than feet. Okay, number one. Number two, there's also, other stories that come up, the story of Manu, the first king, type of thing. And so that's why you must respect the king and follow the Varnas. Because Manu was the chosen of the gods, excuse me, there's my monotheism getting in the way, was the choice of the gods, and are you really going to question the gods and who they chose? No. Okay? Now, of course, while it does work for some of the people, it doesn't convince everyone. So we begin to see different people rise up and challenge these beliefs. Okay? I know the stories and I know all of this, but I still don't understand why our priests can just sit there in luxury and do nothing, whereas we're the ones that have to work every day and still see nothing for our labor. But also, I can see a cute girl from a farming family and I can't even, marry her because, I'm from a ditch digging family. So what's the deal with that? Okay? So, there's a lot of philosophies that come up during this time. Once again, like when we looked at China, this is only a 101 class, so we can only look at two very specific ones. Okay? The first one is called Jainism. All right? Now, it is espoused by a man, and I always butcher this, I apologize, Vardhamana Mahavira. I just go with Mahavira, just go with the second name, okay? And so he notices this, that for most of the people, life is very unfair. And so at age 30, he gives up all of his possessions, literally gives up everything. When you live a life of chosen poverty, it's known as asceticism. Okay, he becomes an ascetic, and he starts to wander India searching for the meaning of life, because it has to be more than life, death, rebirth, life, death, rebirth, life, death, rebirth, without any evidence that you're actually progressing, into the higher class. Or, for most people, life, death, rebirth is just shitty life, death, rebirth into just a shitty life type of thing. All right? Now, as he's going around, he comes to a couple of conclusions. Number one, that if you want your soul to be purified, that basically we're here to try to purify our soul, okay? And if you want your soul to be purified, you have to give up everything, everything that you own, every pleasure, okay? And just FYI, no matter what the belief, even amongst like Christianity or Islam or whatever, there are small groups that believe that pain and suffering are good for you. They purify you. They cleanse your soul. Okay? And so this is basically what he begins to preach, number one. The other thing is a reverence for life. Okay? That all life is precious, and not just human life. All right? Because all life is a creation of the gods. And so the concept is known as ahimsa, where you harm no living creature. So if you see a spider in your bathroom, do you smash it right away? Or do you get a sheet of paper and go, here, spider, 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 and you pick it up and you go to the window and you put it outside. Go, live your spider life and meet a spider woman and have spider babies and live spiderly ever after. Okay? You do your whole thing. And in this case, so if you harm no living being, what type of diet are you eating? Yeah, plants. You become vegetarian, all right, type of thing. And you don't harm any creature. So you're a pacifist also, okay? If you do this, at some point when you die, you will attain a state of permanent happiness and permanent bliss, okay? Otherwise, you're going to keep doing this cycle of death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth. And for most people, like 99.9% of people, it's a shitty life and rebirth and a shittier life and rebirth, okay? So if you want to keep doing that, go ahead, keep doing it. If you want to, at some point, jump off of that circle and attain eternal happiness, give up everything you have, live a life of poverty, live a life of no harm and vegetarianism, and at some point, your soul will be so pure that you will attain, happiness. Okay? He didn't give it a name. That's the next guy. Okay? So this is Jainism. Now we look at Buddhism. Okay? Now, just FYI, I always throw in this disclaimer because I don't pretend to understand or be an expert in Buddhism. I understand the basics of it. And like many beliefs, okay, and you can look at whatever like belief system or religion today, it is not the same as when it was founded. We have different varieties. We have different groups that break off. We have certain people that emphasize certain aspects of that belief, and then others will emphasize others. And so this is original Buddhism, okay, when it was first founded. Later on, and we will talk about it, Buddhism gets affected by its contact with other cultures. So that Buddhism today is different from what I'm describing here, okay? Now, it starts with a man named Siddhartha Gautama, okay? he eventually becomes known as the Buddha, okay, which is where the movement gets its name. All right. Now, he actually comes from the warrior class. All right. His family is a very important family in this warrior class. Okay. And he is actually from one of the states where his family is part of the ruling, oligarchy. Okay. So some members of his family are, in fact, running the state. And so because of it, he grew up in a very, very sheltered life. He had no contact with the outside world. All of his life was just basically, you're important, you're great, here's warrior training, and that was it. Okay? As a teenager, he sneaks out of the family compound. And for the first time ever, he sees what the world is really like. He sees that for most people, life is suffering. That unlike him, people don't have privilege. People don't have servants. People aren't attended to and told how special they are and, have everything given to them. That for most people, life is harsh and life is a struggle, okay? And he begins to question the reality of everything because he's like, all my life I've been told I'm special and that I have this purpose and, these are the things that I'm supposed to do and yet is this person's purpose really to suffer and dig ditches type of thing? Or by now we have the untouchables, the pariahs. This people's mission in life is just to clean all the garbage and suffer all kinds of abuse. You're telling me that that's their reality? Okay? So when he's 29, he does something similar to Mahavira in that he gives up everything and he begins to wander around India searching for the meaning of existence. What is the purpose of all of this? How come I get these things and the majority of people don't? Okay? And so, like I said, he poses that question to himself. All right? There has to be a much bigger reason, a much bigger purpose than just being born, living, dying, being reborn. And once again, the way Jainism looks at it, living a shitty life, dying, and then being reborn into another shitty life. He's like, that can't be the reason why the gods put us here. That can't. I refuse to believe that the gods would do that to us. Okay? And so, he wanders India for 6 years, searching for answers. All right? One day, he finds himself on the banks of the Ganges River. And it comes to him a similar idea to what Jainism is, okay? Except he gives it a name, nirvana, okay? For those of you that are old enough or who listen to classic, I have to say that because it's now on the classic rock stations, Nirvana was a band in the 90s. They had pretty cool music. Yeah, it was like my early college years type of thing. But yes, okay, Nirvana, not a band, but the idea of nirvana, okay, which is eternal contentment because you become one with the universe. You literally become a part of the universe, okay? Now, he was like, you need to find a middle ground between living a good life and sacrifice, okay? Because, yeah, obviously you didn't choose. He's like, I didn't choose to be born into a life of privilege, but I can choose what I do with that, okay? So, there's 4 noble truths, okay? So, in order to achieve nirvana, in order to achieve this eternal contentment, number 1, you have to accept the fact that life is suffering. Life sucks. It sucks for everyone. All right? Boom. Once you have accepted that, number 2, the reason why life sucks, the reason why life is hard, comes from desire. You want things that you cannot have. okay? You have jealousies, you have envy, you want certain things, okay? So, if you want to get rid of suffering, number 3, you have to remove these desires from your life. You have to quite literally purify yourself, all right? If you can teach yourself to not want things, okay, then you're on the right path. How do you teach yourself to not want things? Okay, here comes a subsection. It was known as the Eightfold Path. Okay, I don't have all of it up there because unfortunately this isn't a class on Buddhism. We're only spending literally half a class period. But you have to search for wisdom, so you have to educate yourself. You have to have ethical behavior, so you got to be good to other people. You have to have mental discipline, so, mind over matter, and, if you have desires, you should be able to overcome them. There's like a couple other ones, like right thought, you have to have good thoughts. Right profession, you have to pick a career that calls to you, okay? Because he's like, I was born into the warrior class, but I really don't want to be a warrior, okay? Like type of thing. So all of these things, once you do all of that, you eliminate desire from your life, and by eliminating desire, you achieve this peace, all right? You are happy, and at some point, you stop living, dying, rebirthing, and you go to nirvana, okay? Now, does it happen in a week? Does it happen in 6 months? No. Does it happen in 6 years? No. Does it happen in 6 lifetimes? No. Okay? It could take you 10 lifetimes. It could take you 12. All right? But at some point, once you reach this state of enlightenment, okay, you enter nirvana, you become a part of the universe, and boom. You have escaped the cycle of shitty life, death, rebirth, shitty life, death, rebirth, and so on, and so on, and so on. Okay? Now, Buddhism becomes extremely popular because it's actually pretty simple. I mean, just teach yourself to be happy with what you have, not desire things, and, you can kind of live a pretty decent life knowing that at some point, maybe not in this life, maybe not in the next life or the life after, but at some point I will become a part of the universe, number 1. Number 2, you don't have to give up everything you own, like Jainism, okay? You get to choose what you do with your privilege, okay? Oh, and guess what? You don't got to give up meat. Not yet. All right? You don't got to give up meat. All right? You should still be nice to other people and to the animals and to the spiders. All right? But, the whole concept of not killing isn't there yet. Okay? Now, I'll finish with this. Even though Buddhism starts in India and it spreads like crazy throughout India, today, most Indians are Hindu, which is, Buddhism is really big in like China and Southeast Asia. It actually moves places because it does change and it does adapt and it does come into contact with other cultures that affect it. Okay? On Friday, all right, I know you guys are anxious because y'all love me. On Friday, we will talk about the Greeks. Those of you who walked in late, our exam will be on Wednesday, a week from today. Okay, guys, now you can go.